Now, one of the biggest talking points so far in 2026 has, of course, been the performance or lack thereof from Aston Martin. So today I want to take a look at the 10 biggest drop-offs in terms of one-year performance in F1 history from 1990 all the way up to 2026, and we'll see exactly how far up the list Aston Martin is. So comparing one-year qualifying performance difference from 1 year to the next. We'll talk about some of the reasons why each of these teams had such big drop-offs. And so in number 10 is Scuderia Italia from 1993. So what I want to talk about first is taking a look at the pace drops in terms of 1 year qualifying difference. 1.79% drop. When you convert this to about a 90-second per pace difference over a 90-second lap, this would translate to roughly being 1.611 seconds slower compared to the absolute pace of the leaders that year. So going into the 1993 season, the Scuderia Italia team in 1992 had previously had their chassis built by Italian firm Dallara. For 1993, they switched to Lola chassis. The car was very, very slow. It struggled to qualify. There were financial issues as well. And eventually, at the end of the season, they opted to merge with Minardi for 1994 before the owner of the team, or the co-owner of the team at that point, decided to just leave F1 entirely. Now, next up, number 9. Number 9, we're going to be taking a look at Jordan from 1992. Pace drop of 1.8%, roughly about 1.62 seconds drop in terms of one lap pace. For Jordan, it's a bit of an interesting situation. 1991, their first season in F1, actually things were pretty good. Of course, that was Schumacher's debut year. But for 1992, they had to make a change in terms of their engines. 1991, they were going with Ford engines, not a terrible engine at the time. But for 1992, because of financial issues, Eddie Jordan was forced to switch to the cheaper, slower Yamaha engines. Another possible reason pace dropped off is that the driver lineup did get a little bit worse, in my opinion. 1991, they had a lineup of Andrea de Gevres, Bertrand Gaccio, but for the following year, they were forced to switch to a lineup of Mauricio Gugelmin and Stefano Modena. So a little bit of a downgrade, I would say, in terms of lineup, and those things both contributed to Jordan having won the 9th biggest pace drop since 1990. All right, next up, number 8 is Tyrrell from 1995, a pace drop of 1.81% or 1.629 seconds. Now, Tyrrell is a bit of an interesting one. When I was doing research for this video, I couldn't find any reasons why Tyrrell had such a remarkable pace drop-off from 94 to 95. I think just looking through the data, I think they really just overperformed in 1994, as they've been kind of declining for years, and they were kind of in a state of gradual financial decline all throughout the 90s. So I think a bit of overperformance in 94. One of their drivers, Mark Blundell, even got a podium in 1994 in the Spanish Grand Prix. So I think, again, for this one, unlike a lot of the other ones where there's a lot of clear reasons why the team underperformed, for Tyrrell, I think it's just they really overperformed the year before, so a bit of a crash back down to earth in 1995. So going back to the early 90s for the next one, number 8 is LaRousse 1991, pace drop of 1.95% or 1.755 seconds. Now for LaRousse, a couple of different things going on here. The team was in financial trouble. They had to switch from Lamborghini engines to Hart engines, so basically a manufacturer team to, I guess, what you would call a privateer engine at the time. They also didn't make their own chassis. They were relying on the Lola firm for their chassis. And again, it was a bit of a train wreck that year. They didn't pay for Lola for the chassis either. And so again, a bit of a train wreck all around for the LaRousse team. Now, moving on to number 6. Number 6 is Lotus, again from the same year, 1991. Pace drop of 2.01% or 1.809 seconds. For Lotus, a bunch of different things here. Previous year, 1990, they basically had the Camel Tobacco Company as their title sponsor, but they lost that Camel sponsorship partially as a result of the infamous Martin Donnelly crash at Jerez the year before. The other big change from the year before is that the Chapman family, which had run this team for a long, long time, basically had sold this team to Peter Collins, and he was now running the team. Third big change for Lotus that contributed to this drop-off was that they were forced to switch from Lamborghini engines to Judd engines, and again, those things all contributed to the drop-off of performance. Next, number 5, sticking with the mid-90s again for this one. Next is Minardi in 1992. Pace drop of 2.09% or 1.881 seconds. For Minardi, pretty simply, I think the biggest contribution to them having such a massive drop-off was a change in engine supplier. For the 1991 season, Minardi used Ferrari engines, but for 1992, they switched to the Lamborghini V12, and it massively impacted the performance of the car that year. So we've been talking a lot about teams in the early mid-90s, and now for a much more recent example, going to 2015 for this one, it is the Marussia team in 4th. A pace drop of 2.2%, which was roughly about 1.98 seconds. Now for Marussia, there's a lot of things going on here, but really the domino effect really starts with Gio Bianchi's fatal crash at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix. This causes their primary investor, Andrei Cheglakov, to basically decides to pull his financial support for the team in the wake of Bianchi's fatal crash. This forces the team to go into administration in the fall of 2014, and they were eventually reestablished in February 2015. So they were pulled out of administration, and so they were basically all their work for the 2015 season was really, really compromised, as they had basically no money for the entire winter. They were basically brought by a consortium. One of them was a former CEO of Salisbury, by a man by the name of Mr. King. Yeah, so the team, when they came out, again, really disorganized team. Both of their drivers signed very late on. Will Stevens, Roberto Meri, not a great driver lineup, probably the weakest driver lineup of last, 15 to 20 years. And so a really, really poor season for Marussia in that year. They were miles off the pace of the rest of the team and were much worse than they were the year before, where, Bianchi had actually scored points at Monaco in that 2014 season. Okay, going to number 3, again, similar time period to Marussia in 2015, but this time it's Lotus in 2014. A pace drop of 2.3%, roughly about 2-second lap time drop compared to the year before. Now, Lotus in 2013 were a front-running team. They got a win courtesy of Kimi Räikkönen at the Australian Grand Prix that year, and they got quite a few podiums throughout the season for both drivers, Räikkönen and Grosjean. But 2014, a lot of problems here. Their team principal, Eric Boullier, left the team in late 2013, early 2014. They were running into financial problems, issues that were already hampering the team in previous years, but became extremely evident in 2014. The team was bought by Andrew Ruhan, who bought basically the majority stake in the team from Jenny Capital. And on top of that, on top of the financial issues and on top of the leadership changes, they went from having a pretty good Renault engine in 2013 to a very, very poor Renault engine in 2014. And so all those things together really contribute to Lotus having a massive drop-off in performance that year. So now we're up to number 2, and number 2 is the Brabham team from 1992. A pace drop of 3.12%, roughly 2.808 seconds in terms of lap time drop. For Brabham, it's a bit of an odd one. Again, a bit similar to Tyrrell. The Tyrrell example that I mentioned before. This was a team that was kind of gradually on the decline for quite a few years, but in the very last season of its existence, which coincidentally was also Damon Hill's first, as you can see in the picture, this was the year where the bottom really just dropped out. They'd been underfunded, and they also had the owners of the team also had quite significant legal financial issues, and they were basically involved in court cases and such throughout the season. But this was Brabham's last year, and they would end up pulling out of the season 5 races before the end. So that leaves 9 out of 10 teams from this video, and of course Aston Martin was kind of the focus of this team. And so that means that 3 races into the 2026 F1 season, Aston Martin officially has the worst pace drop-off of any team since 1990, which is quite impressive, as that's 35 years, almost 40% of F1's history. Pace drop so far of 3.32%, positive 2.988 seconds, almost 3 seconds slower compared to pole position so far through 3 races. Now for Aston Martin, a pretty long laundry list of issues with the team so far this year. Of course, the Honda engine has been cited as the primary reason why they've struggled so far this year, but they're also dealing with vibrations. I was reading a really interesting article on the race which suggests that actually the chassis is responsible for about half of the pace deficit, and of course, the engine's power unit's responsible for the rest. They're very slow in high-speed corners. The car is overweight. Another thing is that in terms of this factory's existence, going back to Force India Racing Point, this is the first time since 2008 that they're making their own gearbox, and that can definitely be a very significant, source of lap time. Another thing that's been, mentioned quite a bit in the last couple of months is that the team reportedly waited 4 months from when they could start designing their chassis, their car, for this year, and basically waited for Adrian Newey to basically end his gardening leave. So they basically gave themselves a 4-month handicap compared to all the other teams on the grid, so not a big surprise that they're behind. So it seems like for Aston Martin, while it's easy to just blame the engine, I do think obviously the engine, the power unit, bears a big chunk of the responsibility. There's a lot of other things going wrong for Aston Martin so far this year. Now, maybe it's a little bit unfair for me to make this video so early in the season, as there are still 19 races left in the year, and of course, very likely Aston Martin will improve. The question is that, will they improve enough over the course of the whole season where, let's say hypothetically, I were to do this video again, would they, drop out of the top 10? I don't think so. I actually think that, realistically speaking, just because of how long it takes to bring engine upgrades, for example, I do think that realistically speaking, they're still going to be in the top 10, worst one-year pace drop-offs of all time with the performance this year, which is pretty disappointing, of course, for the first year in the Adrian Newey era. So there you go. That's all for this video. The top 10 one-year biggest pace drop-offs in F1 since 1990. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.